light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within our words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. With me today on the show, I have my good friend David Slater, who is a spiritual counselor and intuitive. And the curious topic we wanted to discuss today, distinguishing God from religion. I have met so many people over the years who don't seem to be able to do that. Their only conception of God is whatever particular church or religious leader has told them, as if God did not exist until man created God.
Right.
Which, to me, kind of totally contradicts the definition of God in the first place. The challenge, I guess, is if one wants to discover genuine spirituality, my suggestion, I guess, is that the first step is to distinguish God from religion, to understand that no particular church, synagogue, or religion has captured God and put God in a box where God will now do only what the pastor, minister, bishop, pope, whoever says is allowed, and God will only present God's self in the way that the religion says God is allowed to present God's self. And to me, God is infinity and eternity in addition to highest wisdom and greatest love. And I can't imagine God doing anything other than absolutely laughing at how arrogant and ridiculous such claims would have to be.
We humans are arrogant by nature.
I don't know if I want to say by nature, but it certainly does seem to be common.
We have a globe covered mostly with water, and we call it Earth. We call it the one dry spot we're on. Exactly. Because we live on the dry spot, we'll call it Earth. Mm-hmm. To ask somebody, do you think God is a member of a religion? And what religion was he before that religion ever came into existence? And to ask some of these very leading questions.
What was God before any religion existed?
Yes.
So I guess as my first act of humility within this show to say that yes, even our discussion is based entirely upon human perception. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a very, very important perception to recognize even the possibility, even the mystery of something that is bigger and more expansive and more multidimensional and more mysterious and more potent than anything that all the human religions have ever said.
To be able to ask your own self, or ask yourself the tough questions, mm-hmm. Again, allowing for the possibilities. No, we weren't there for the very beginning. The Genesis 1:1 thing. Mm-hmm. But to ask ourselves, what would that be like? Can we? And
to remember from God's perspective, there was something before that.
Yes, absolutely. Again, opening ourselves up to the possibilities and all the challenging questions we can have. Mm-hmm. If I'm Catholic and I believe God is Catholic too, what was he before he was a Catholic? And that sounds like a ridiculous question, but it can be a rather potent one.
Yeah, and it can be a major turn in the road on somebody's path of faith. Uh-huh. On someone's spiritual path that they were told it was going to be a nice straight 4-lane highway from here to heaven. Uh-huh. And they get to a certain point and suddenly wake up one morning going, this is wrong. Uh-huh. I don't know what right is, but I know this is wrong.
Right.
So on the flip side of all this, I don't want to be castigating and demonizing institutionalized religion. Yeah. I think it is completely possible for the divine to manifest or express itself through institutionalized religion. Mm-hmm. The problem mainly comes in not being able to separate the two, mm-hmm. to say that God and religion are the same. instead of recognizing that religion is a tool God may use at some point. In one of my monthly newsletters, the way I think I phrased it a number of years ago was that I don't have any particular argument with institutionalized religion. I just think we need to get back to using our religions to nurture our relationship with God.
Exactly.
Instead of using our relationship with God to support our religions.
Right. It is interesting. One of the things I've noticed with people outside of religions is they'll say, well, they're so hypocritical. I'm like, find me a human being that is not hypocritical. A religion is a social organization. Mm-hmm. And you'll find this very similar problems in any given church. You'll find in a Rotary Club or a high school glee club or any social organization you get. We need to understand that we are human and we have a nature in and of ourselves. Mm-hmm. Here's something I find interesting. Again, having experienced the Catholic Church as a young child, one thing I find is powerful and wonderful is that if I am in Madrid, mm-hmm. Or in Istanbul or Phnom Penh, I can go to a Catholic church and experience a Catholic Mass that I'll recognize. Mm-hmm. And there is something very soothing to the animal that is a human. They can say, oh, okay, this may be in a completely different language, but I know exactly what they're saying, and can find that beautiful relationship with God in that remarkable capability.
Which can be emotionally and psychologically empowering.
Uh-huh.
If one is already dealing with the stresses of being in a totally foreign environment.
Exactly.
That you're looking for 1 ounce of familiarity someplace so you don't go crazy with frustration because you can't speak the language. You're getting lost every time you leave the hotel. Uh-huh. So many adversarial circumstances, but in the midst of it all is a religious practice that grants a little bit of familiarity to keep you able to function in this otherwise confusing environment. A brief aside on your earlier comment, uh-huh. I aspire to be the person who is not hypocritical in any way.
Right.
I aspire to be the person who is genuinely honest in every way. I understand that these are not particularly common qualities in our world.
Right.
Nevertheless, I reach for them, but I think the reason I reach for them is because of my relationship with the divine. That as much as I have come to an understanding that God is bigger than the church, mm-hmm. I don't automatically presume that I will never meet God within the church. That God may decide to meet me there sometime.
Wouldn't it be a phenomenal experience to realize an individual is bigger than a church?
Say more about that. I think I understand where you're going with that, but I'm not totally clear.
God is of course bigger than a church, and God doesn't have a religion, or at least in my belief structure. Mm-hmm. But aren't I a complex enough person that a book of rules can't encompass me?
The notion that any multidimensional person could be totally described, encompassed, or how many books would you have to write so that 100% of your understanding, your being, your passions, your beliefs, your hopes and fears, your aspirations, your perceptions, your sensitivities, all the things, every single minuscule component we would need to create another manifestation of you. Mm-hmm. I don't think all the books in the New York Public Library could contain that detail and in such a way that any of it could be reconstituted as you. Uh-huh. If that many books is not enough to reconstitute an ordinary human being, uh-huh. how much less would the biblical canon be able to encompass the totality of who and what the divine is.
Right.
And if that's just, in the 1930s, during the days of Prohibition, when no alcohol was legally sold in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
people who wanted alcohol would find these private clubs called speakeasies, and they would knock on the door, and this tiny little window would open, just big enough to see somebody's eyes.
Right.
And they would find out whether you were one of the members or not before they let you in.
Joe sent me. Yes.
It seems to me, and the only reason I describe all that is because that little speakeasy window, just big enough for your eyes, that's about all the view of God you've got through any particular sacred text you want to name.
Uh-huh.
And to consider that on the other side of that door is a virtually limitless universe of space, and you're trying to view it all through this speakeasy window in the door.
All right.
That all the more reason to me where it becomes imperative to distinguish God from religion, to understand religion as a tool, but God is a limitless space, and a limitless consciousness, and limitless wisdom, infinite love. To imagine for even a moment that a church or a synagogue or a mosque or any particular religious gathering is the measure of God. I would say you're limping through life with a spiritual disability that is really severe.
I recently had a delightful interaction with some pagans.
Okay.
And it was a group that, some were Wiccan, some were Rosatru, that type of thing, but they fell under the
It was a diverse group.
Yes, but it fell under the umbrella of pagan. And they were referring to the Eclectics. And I looked at them and I said, okay, I know what the word eclectic means, but I've never heard of people being referred to as eclectics. And they're like, oh, those are the people that come into the pagan groups because they want the experience of it. They won't become any degree or initiate in any one belief structure, but they want the experience of paganism and its diversity as part of their experience. So they were actually
using the word as a pejorative.
Quite the opposite, because they were proud of and they liked their... it was divisive slightly, but they liked their eclectics. And quite frankly, I could be considered an eclectic in that group. And I'm like...
The way you were describing it at first, I thought they were saying that there was something wrong with them not embracing full membership in any particular group.
No, they find that as, again, one of their flavors of their religion. And I found that phenomenal. Wouldn't it be wonderful if any other group can say, oh no, these are the people that just come by for the experience of it. And we love them because they bring in their own experience, which enriches our own. I don't know if everyone uses that phrase.
When you say only for the experience, does that mean they're leaving out something important?
No, a true spiritual experience. They may have been in a Catholic church last week. They're in a pagan group this week, and next week they're going to be a Buddhist, or at least experience the Buddhist experience.
Maybe we shouldn't say only the experience then. If they come for the experience of it, they're going one step beyond doctrinal memorization.
Right. Exactly.
That it's not just the letter of the law, but the actual practice of the spiritual wisdom.
Yes. And
it always seemed to me, looking at the spectrum of human religions, paganism seems to be a much more participatory one than most.
Yes. For the fact that usually in a ceremony, that the ones I've seen required more than one person to do something in the process. And again, a thing I found remarkable too is some of the people participating are not initiated or
not
a
formally
of,
members.
Yes, exactly. But they are familiar with the ceremony, so they can help with the ceremony because they hold it in an esteem that everyone else is choosing. I again find that rather delightful, and wouldn't it be wonderful if more of us did that in everything we believe, but especially in our spiritual practice? The people have asked me, so do you meditate? And I'm like, yes. How often? Every day? For how long? Yes.
As long as it takes.
Yes, and it can be, and I could be busy with something else, but still meditating. And other times I'm perfectly silent, but that doesn't mean the lotus position and whatever, or down on my knees.
If it's the quality of the spirit, prayer or meditation, I mean, to me, it's all the same thing. It's communication with the divine. Whether you want to meditate on a biblical verse or meditate on an image that you have in your mind or meditate on a theological idea, whether you want to give specific words that could be construed as a prayer or whether you want to cast a spell. I mean, it's all about interaction with the divine, requesting some sort of divine presence within a particular problematic situation.
Yes.
But to understand that if you have succeeded in separating the divine from religion, the divine is able to be present in every situation, every circumstance, every location there is. There are some circumstances and situations and challenges which church or religion is not able to embrace.
Wouldn't it be delightful if we can conceptualize God as a friend? My thought is, when I address you, I don't always use your name. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, if a word escapes us, we go to grunts and points. Okay. And isn't that a delightful thing? Wouldn't that be great to go with the divine and say, hey, this is who I am? I've shared with some folks how in a meditation I went to God, to spirit, angry with the divine, and they were aghast at that. And yet in this meditation, powerful things happen.
I think God's big enough to handle it.
Yeah, I'm not that much of a threat to him. Her, them.
The divine.
The divine.
By whatever description.
Exactly. And
something we haven't touched on yet, though, in the midst of all this, keying off of arguments with the divine about what unfolds or what doesn't unfold. If God is not separated from the church or the religion or whatever, then all sorts of things get blamed on God that may have nothing to do with divine presence, intention, or intervention.
Yeah.
And in some cases, I would even label it religious abuse, where a presumably well-intentioned minister or religious leader has informed a particular person that if you do such, God will do such. And when it doesn't happen, instead of blaming the minister or the church, they blame God. And from experiences of such abuse, it seems to me that for some people, and I no offense intended to any atheist, this is simply my understanding, it seems to me that many atheists are actually angry at God. And that in many cases, atheism may be an appropriate phase of recovery of spiritual health following an experience of religious abuse. In my experience and from the conversations I've had with people, it seems that once people have managed to process all the religious abuse that they've experienced and get it out of their lives, out of their souls, out of their spirits, that at that point they are then able to look in the mirror and begin to address their own spiritual health and needs. How do I relate to birth and death, to the unknown, to unexplained paranormal clairvoyance? How did I know that? Why did things go unexpectedly right at just the right moment?
Mm-hmm.
In defiance of probability and statistics. Some people may wind up agnostics, some may choose to switch to a different religion, some people may develop their own spiritual practice. But the point is to come up with something that maintains your own spiritual health, something that gives you the ability to cope with birth and death and terminal illness and unexpected blessing and all the other non-material mysteries of life. Something that is uniquely empowering to you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you choose not to have a named deity in the midst of all that, I think God's perfectly fine with you contemplating photographs from the Hubble telescope, and being in awe of the beauty and majesty and expansiveness of the universe. The point is that it's something that contributes to your spiritual health, to your being in balance with all these intangibles of birth and death and life transitions.
Funny, when you were putting that list together, I giggled a couple times. That concept of accepting those unusually wonderful days,
Okay.
where everything seems to be going right.
Gee, why can't we have more days like this?
Well, or just the opposite of just so fully enjoying yourself. I do that on a regular basis, and people get irritated with me. I'm near bouncing off the wall. What a wonderful day. Well, what happened? It ends in why? I don't know. I just feel wonderful today and choose to see everything as a blessing. And you get some strange remarks from that, or strange reactions to that. But
I aspire to never get so stuck in cynicism that I fail to see the blessings. And I aspire to never be so blinded by the blessings that I am not paying attention to the potholes in the road.
Right.
There have been times, though, where, after supper, I walk out in the backyard and I see my dogs playing and the evening sun streaming through the trees, and there's just something that feels beautiful about it all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's beyond anything they preached at the church. It's beyond anything described in any doctrinal text.
Yes.
It's just a feeling of rightness with life that reminds me I have a soul.
Yeah. Those times that catch your breath. That incredible feeling of it.
A moment of awe.
Yeah.
Yes, this is really, really wonderful. And yet, as soon as we say it or recognize it, it's already slipped into the past. Because, time is constant for us, and life is fleeting, and everything keeps passing, and once a moment is gone, you can't go back to it. You can only create the next moment.
Mm-hmm.
Which is where I come back to the wonderful, my paraphrase of the line from the third act of Our Town, the play by Thornton Wilder.
Mm-hmm.
When Emily has passed away and she's looking back at her life, and she asks the narrator, in effect, doesn't anyone know they live while they do it?
Yeah.
Doesn't anyone know they live while they do it?
Yeah.
To me, if you're going to separate God from religion, you're also going to have to know that you live while you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the kind of empowering truth that seeing a God that's bigger than the church, bigger than the doctrine, bigger than the Bible, bigger than the Quran, bigger than all the sacred texts put together, just glimpsing that for a moment takes you to a place of such awe.
I've challenged a lot of people with that what are you wanting to do with this experience? Okay, you're fine with your belief structure, whatever that is. Great. What do you challenge? What do you choose from this? And when they'll look at me, that funny puppy dog look where the head kind of turns to the side type of a thing, I'll ask them, okay, get a 5-year-old, tell them you're going to McDonald's for a Happy Meal, then watch that reaction. Now, when was the last time you felt ecstasy from any part of this? I love those times in my life when I do need to take care of chores or responsibilities, and I get angry with them because it takes me away from the powerful experience I'm having. And
religions are more focused on forms and consequently on chores, things that have to be enacted at regular intervals because of some sort of obligation.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe those obligations are willingly accepted and they're not a problem to you. That's great. Just don't see them as the last word.
Yeah. Have them in their own time.
The chores are to support the greater living of life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't wash the dishes because I exist to wash dishes. I wash the dishes so that I can have clean dishes to enjoy meals on. I can have a mealtime with friends. So that it empowers the living of life.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't empower the living of life and becomes an end in itself, a goal in and of itself, when it's done, you're left with basically nothing.
Or you're negating your own existence.
Or like Emily would say, you're not knowing that you live while you do it.
Yeah. I have been wrestling with that one quite a bit these days, with empty nest and understanding.
Mm.
I'm not an ATM for a family.
And life is finite. At some point it's going to be gone. And the most wonderful thing is to know that for those moments, I got to be part of it.
Yes.
I was there when it happened. And I'm a better person for having been there and having been fully present while I was there.
Yes. And got the experience.
Any final comments as we wind up our...
I could probably think of about a half dozen, but we would start things all over again. Maybe
every conversation is an ongoing conversation.
Absolutely. There is no end to any story. Thank you very much. This was delightful.
You're very welcome, and may we each continue to live our stories to their fullest.
And live while we're doing it.
Thank you.